We're back on the road to City Hall. My first guest tonight is the Brooklyn Democratic Party chairman. It's a position he won after Assemblyman Vito Lopez stepped aside from that position last year. Earlier today, he released a statement saying Lopez should immediately resign from the Assembly. We welcome Frank Seddio back to the program. Good to see you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
This is a tough one for you. This isn't something I think you've ever done before. Asked an assemblyman to step down. Why is this different?
I think it's different for a very important reason. There's been a question about whether or not Vito Lopez has been in some way, shape, or form guilty of these issues. Clearly, the report that has come out has indicated in every way and every fashion that Vito has committed some very grievous things in his time in the Assembly. We have 8 women who, in fact, we should be very concerned about, who have now suffered the indignities of having to be exposed to some of the tactics Vito has played in this. And I've known Vito a very, very long time. I certainly would be honestly say I've never seen any of this occur. But this report is not just an accident. A lot of work went into it. It was an honest effort to evaluate what occurred. And we now have the results of it. And I think that Vito stepping down will be a benefit, not for him, but for the district that he represents. This is a difficult community. Bushwick and Ridgewood and those portions of Greenpoint and Williamsburg that he represents have been a struggling community for years. He's done so much good there. To let it all be pushed aside by personal ambition is just not acceptable. Those communities deserve good representation, and unfortunately, Vito's time of doing that is past.
And just to be clear, he said in a statement today that he's stepping down. He wants to step down at the end of the session. He may not get that opportunity, but that he intends to run for city council this year.
Which I think is another tragic accident. I think Vito running for, this is almost like a Greek play. I mean, I look at it as one of the great Greek tragedies of a man who had so much to offer, now trying to save face for personal ambition. And it's done nothing, it will do nothing again but hurt the communities he serves. If I had the opportunity to tell him personally, I would say, Vito, please, for the good of all that you've done and for the communities that you represent, don't run. Let others run. Let them be the advocates. Let them be the successors to the good work you've done. Let them be able to advocate, because you won't have that ability to do so.
And you say this is somebody who has known him since he first was elected in the 80s.
He was first elected in the Assembly.
Yeah, and that was in the mid-80s. And you served alongside him. You were in the Assembly for 7 years.
Yes,
right?
and in fact, Vito was very, very helpful to me when I first went in the Assembly after the tragic death of Tony Genovese, and I stepped into that role. Vito was one of the first to come to me and assist me and give me advice and offer and serve as a mentor. So this is a difficult statement for me to make, and it's not meant to do for publicity purposes. It's meant to make him understand, to look in the mirror and look and see the light and know this is not a good thing to do. It's not helping your community. It's not helping you. And it's just hurting all that you've worked so hard for.
Let me ask you this. You worked for Stanley Fink, the former Speaker of the Assembly.
Well, he was my assemblyman. I was in his district.
But I
was part of his political organization.
You were part of his political organization, the mighty Thomas Jefferson Democrats. You also, as chairman, certainly sort of understand this stuff, and then you served up there. Tell us a little bit about, I've been up to Albany a lot. I haven't been up there like you have. What's going on up there that people feel that they can act like predators and get away with it?
Well, I'm concerned there's something in the water, to be honest with you, at this point, because I don't know what's going on. I mean, I've never seen such an outbreak of circumstances that have occurred in the last few months. And I think I have to applaud the U.S. Attorney and his office, and both offices, for investigating the issues that have been brought to their attention and bringing it to conclusions like this. It's a sad day that we see so many elected officials finding themselves indicted or under investigation. But I do have to say, there are a very small minority in the great, almost 200 people represent us in public government today, between the City Council, the State Senate, and in the Assembly. And this is a very small minority. Every one is one too many, but I think that the overall measure of the legislature should be by what they have done and accomplished as a body.
Well, then let me ask you the tough question, because this is coming up quite a bit. And reading through the report, it's impossible to escape that the staff of the Assembly Speaker, they got complaints in writing from one of these young women, and they asked her repeatedly, and they sort of delayed. They said, "Oh, do you really want to start a formal process?" And there's kind of a way that they were either trying to make it go away, hope that it would go away, buy their way out of it, keep it all secret and so forth. That goes right to the Speaker, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, and the speaker has admitted that, and he said he made a mistake. This is a man who's done a fabulous job in this. So despite what a lot of the press has said, he has done a great job as a Speaker of the New York State Assembly. And this is not an easy thing. Having the experience of my own predecessor holding that title, I understand a little bit about what goes on to its measures. This was a mistake, trying to keep it a secret or letting this happen in the way it did. I'm convinced that it's a mistake that will never be made again. And if any good came out of that, it will be that those kinds of closed session discussions and settlements will never be something that will occur.
This is not our first trip down this particular aisle, right? I mean, I don't know if you were serving at the time that the whole thing with Michael Boxley came up.
Yes, I was.
But it was, I mean, same sort of thing. Counsel to the Speaker and getting all kinds of different favors and treatment and, bending over backward until he's finally taken out in handcuffs.
Well, and I was a member of the legislature at that time, and each of those issues were looked at independently. I don't know that it's the same comparison as this issue. And it's not uncommon for the employer of an agency, of someone, to have to be responsible and act to address an issue when it's brought to them. And then, if possible, have to pay a financial settlement. It happens all the time. And certainly in private sectors, it occurs in lawsuits. I think that the Boxley things are very different from here, but they did occur, and they were handled in a different way based on the circumstances of each of those events. And ultimately, the Albany District Attorney believed that he had a criminal case against Mr. Boxley, and it was resulted in him accepting a conviction.
Let me move on to something different. I think the question to ask everybody going up there is going to be, would you want your daughter, would you want your sister, your wife, to work in that environment? And I think from that perspective, maybe they'll start to get things in better shape. But let's move on. That's my little editorial
Well, I
comment.
can tell you on a personal note, if one of my daughters had something like this occur, I would have been addressing it very differently and very forthrightly.
That's the Brooklyn reaction. I was reading
That's
this
right.
report and I'm thinking, do they have no brothers or uncles or something? Because
certainly would have been. There would have certainly been. He would have been hospitalized for another reason.
Right. Right. Wouldn't have been calling lawyers. Let's talk about the big race, or I guess one of the biggest races in Brooklyn right now is the borough president's race, for which there appears to be no competition. Now, as party leader, that's I guess a success for you.
Well, I'd like to consider that to say that I hope to have had some measure of success.
No. By the way, no disrespect to John Gangemi, who is running, but is a former councilman from another era. Not much support, not much money.
And true, there is a race, but it's certainly not the one that could have been. And I think we worked very hard with the various candidates who considered the race to see what was best for Brooklyn and how we can best achieve that and see what their own personal ambitions were. And ultimately, that resulted in no serious challenge to Eric Adams. And I am very pleased with the work Eric has done. He's a former police captain in the police department who's been spoken outwardly about many of the issues that affect the minority communities. He's been a champion to ensure that the police treat people fairly. And frankly, I think he's going to be an advocate for all of Brooklyn. It's a tough act to follow Marty Markowitz, but I think Eric will bring the Eric Adams era in a way that will be totally different, but equally effective for us.
Okay, you make it borough president, I'm going to need another state senator. We'll talk about that another time. In our final minute, let me ask you, are you going to be making an endorsement in the mayor's race?
We are meeting on May 28th. We've asked the leaders, pretty much given the leaders the opportunity to choose the candidates that they want. And there will be an endorsement of the different candidates, at least an identification of which leaders are supporting what candidate at that time.
You got two candidates from Brooklyn. Do they get first right of refusal?
It's an interesting, in my own surveys, it's been interesting. Certainly one of them is an overwhelming favorite, and I think that'll be apparent on May 28th when we have that vote.
Okay, we'll catch up with you then. Thank you so much for coming in tonight.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. Still to come, we'll take a tour of City Councilwoman Letitia James's Brooklyn district, including a visit to the Jewish Children's Museum. Also tonight, we'll discuss the week in the mayor's race, including Christine Quinn's admission that she's a recovering alcoholic and bulimic. Stay with us.